What's up guys, my name is Robin and I make stuff, and today we are talking about everyone's favorite subject, perspective. Not really. Most of my students hear the word perspective and they check out immediately. Just hang on, because I promise this is going to make sense in some way, shape, or form. I'm gonna walk you through each of the points that I tell my students. It's just gotta be convincing enough that when you hold it up or you hang it up, someone can stand 10 feet away and be like, oh, look at that cool little shack, whatever the heck we're doing. As usual, if you find this video helpful, make sure you give it a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. This is gonna make way more sense once we start doing it, so let's jump in. This is the horizon, and here we have some mountains out in the distance. And here we are. Hi! So we have some mountains and we have a horizon line. What the heck is the horizon line? The horizon line is where the sky meets the earth, or where your line of sight extends out from where you're standing. So if this is where we're standing and we're looking this way, we'll leave him like this so that he has eyes. The horizon line is essentially in line with where his eyes are, looking straight out. There's your horizon line. That's the train of thought. We're all about the same height, give or take several inches, close enough when the scale of the earth is very large. If we have a road that's going to this mountain and we want to convey that it's going into the distance, if we draw it like this, and it's got dotted lines going into the distance, does that look like it's going into the distance, or does it look like it's going straight up a hill? We want this to look like it's getting smaller and smaller and further away the closer it gets to that. We're going to say that as things get closer to us over here, they're going to seem bigger. And as they get closer to the horizon line, they're going to get smaller. So we want to draw them more like this. Distance is going to get compressed as it goes further away, which means the spaces in our little lines and our lines themselves are going to become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually they look just like one little line. Our road is going to look like it's getting closer and closer and closer until it vanishes on the horizon line, or as far as the eye can see. Dashes on our road would look more like this. Further apart, then getting smaller, closer together, smaller, until eventually it's a little line. Now that feels more like it's going into the distance. The same applies for a river. If we want to say, oh, we have a river that's going towards this mountain, we wouldn't draw it like this. The same thickness all the way down. That looks like a squiggly line just going straight up. That's not what we're trying to convey. We want that to have the same sort of feel that that road did, which means that it's going to get smaller as it gets out into the distance and bigger as it gets closer to us. We have to make it bigger and then smaller, more compressed as it gets closer to the horizon line. So for guides, we'll say that this river is going to come straight towards us, but it's also going to wind. I'm going to draw this guideline here, very similar to what we just did with the road. That winding is going to get bigger and wider as it comes down. So smaller, getting a little further apart, and that starts to feel like it's going into the distance. Same concept, kind of going in this pointed cone shape, going into the distance. This is 1 point perspective. If we want to draw a building, let's think about it as a box. I have a box here. If we're looking at this box straight on, here's our little guy looking at it straight on, all we see is this front face of this box. If we start to turn it slightly, now we're seeing two sides of this box. What do you notice about these lines? They start to go towards each other. If this was a much bigger box, these lines would eventually come to this point on the horizon and they would vanish. That would be a vanishing point. If we turn this box like this, that same concept happens. Let's say we have this little structure, house. How do we figure that out? Well, I can see that this is our horizon line, and it looks like this structure is sitting up on a hill. If the horizon line is our line of sight, then that means that we are standing below this structure. If we were standing above the structure, then that structure would be sitting lower than our horizon line. As we're creating any sort of structure, we want to figure out what piece of this structure is closest to us. And that's going to be this front left corner. This structure is rotated like this, and we're looking at it from about this angle. So this is the closest corner to where we're standing. We want to figure out where that is first, put that on our paper, then we can build this entire thing off of that line. It's also important to note that as we're doing 2-point perspective, which means that we're looking at something that is turned on an axis versus straight ahead. If we're looking at something straight ahead, that's going to be 1-point perspective, meaning that all of the lines are going to go to 1 point, just like that road did. So we're looking at something that's shifted just a little bit. All of the vertical lines are going to be straight up and down vertical. All of the horizontal parallel lines, parallel to each other in real life, these are parallel. In real life, these are parallel. But as it's shifted, those lines don't look parallel anymore. But in real life, they are. They're parallel. We want to take all of the horizontal parallel lines and send them off to a vanishing point. So if we're going to say that there is a vanishing point over here, we're making this up, and a vanishing point over here, and we have a little structure that's sitting above our horizon line, and that front corner looks like this. The bottom of that line, that corner, we're going to draw an imaginary line to the left-hand vanishing point and the right-hand vanishing point. From the top of that line, we're going to draw a line to our right-hand vanishing point and another imaginary line as a guide to our left-hand vanishing point. These are our walls. If we were to take this thing and rotate it like this, there was that wall. That wall's right there. So if we're going to draw this box, for example, rotated just a little bit like this, we want to say, well, this distance, just eyeballing it, is about like that. And we draw a vertical line. The vertical lines are all parallel, and they look parallel on your paper. The horizontal lines, which is this one and this one, are the ones that go to the vanishing points. Typically, any horizontal parallel line on the left-hand side of that first corner that you draw is going to go to the left-hand vanishing point on the left-hand side of this first corner. Any horizontal parallel lines on the right-hand side of that first corner that you drew are going to go to the right-hand vanishing point. So keep that in mind. I'm going to say that this side of this box is about that big. I'm just making it up. Now, here is that box. We're not going to draw the underneath side. This is very basic, and we're saying that this is on a hill, so we're not going to see it. We want to figure out how to draw this roof. How do we figure out where that point is of that roof? I'm going to say that it's in the center of this box. We don't need to know any math. Here's a really cool trick. You just draw an X in that box. Where that X crosses is the center of that box. Now, because this is going into the distance, that distance is compressing, which means that even though in real life, if we turn that box towards us, this distance from here to here is the same measurement as this to there. But because it's going into the distance, it's going to look smaller on paper. This is the center point, which means the peak of that roof is somewhere in this neighborhood. I'm going to just guess, maybe right there. From that point, you draw a line to the top left corner and to the top right corner of your box. From this top here, you're also going to draw an imaginary line to your vanishing point. However, keep in mind, when you're doing uphill perspective, something sits higher than where you're at, we're down here, this thing is up there, we're going to be looking up at it, we're going to see less of the roof than if we were up above it looking down. That's just how it works. This point is going to be an imaginary line to there, a very tiny amount of roof. Well, how do we figure out how wide this roof is? Just mimic this line. Almost do copy, paste, copy, paste. I find something that is a straight edge like a ruler. I line it up with that line, and then I scoot it until it reaches this back left top corner of this box, and then I just draw a line. Now that gives me the roof of this structure. We also have a big open door. So for the open door, I'm going to suggest that maybe it's in the middle of this half of this square, whatever that is. So we'll put a mark right there in the middle, and we're going to do a vertical line. Remember, the vertical lines are all parallel to one another in the drawing. So it's going to be parallel to this. So vertical line, about that high, we'll say. From the top of that line, we're going to draw another imaginary line to the right hand vanishing point because it's on the right side of our front corner. So imaginary line. This is really important when you're doing windows and doors. You want to have those horizontal lines go to the correct vanishing point. I've seen it too many times where people are measuring over here and then all of a sudden their door opening is going at some strange angle and it looks very, very odd. We'll put the other end of our opening in the middle of this section, vertical line to the top of that imaginary line we drew. Vertical, meaning it's parallel to the other vertical line, so parallel to this line. Now, we've got our opening. Same thing happens if we have a window. So we'll say, we're going to put a window up here, and I just picked a spot, but it's going to be centered on this vertical center line. Just like we did with this front corner, the bottom point and the top point are all going to go to this vanishing point, and their imaginary lines go down here. And then we're going to draw another line on the other side. And now we have the correct angles for our window. Now, none of this is exact. I'm not using a ruler to make super straight lines. It's just the suggestion. I'm not going to be holding this up to this one or this one to that one. This is going to stand alone by itself. And it's important to remember that when you're doing watercolor or painting of any kind, and you're trying to replicate or suggest another thing that you've seen, we're not hanging it next to that thing unless that's the project you're creating. This will be a standalone piece. No one will be able to say, well, it doesn't look like that, if it's not sitting right next to it. So now we also have the idea of the overhang of the roof. Basically, this line is just going to be copy and pasted out here, parallel to itself. It's an angled line, not a horizontal line. So I'm just going to draw a light line out here. This top roof line is going to get extended out just a little bit and extended out there just a little bit. Back line is going to be also copy and pasted. And I'm saying that in that term so that it makes sense. This line down here, also sort of copy and pasted. It would essentially go to this vanishing point on the left. It's very slight, and we can kind of just eyeball it. And this line also copy and pasted up to there, which means then that these inside lines that we made could get erased. This is going to come down just a little bit further. The bottom point of that line, and again, I just took this line, copied it, and do another one. The bottom point of this line goes back to this left-hand vanishing point. And I'm just going to eyeball it, but essentially it would go somewhere back over there. Okay, now this is all overhang, so it would be shaded underneath there. But that's how you do two-point perspective on a downhill looking up at the structure. We survived. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time that I make stuff.